So, what if I told you that most wealthy people don't actually use their own money to get rich? I know, it sounds kind of backward, right? Maybe even a little shady. But honestly, it's one of the most fundamental truths in finance. And once you get it, you'll start seeing it absolutely everywhere.
Let me just ask you straight up. Do you really think the wealthiest people out there are just meticulously saving every single penny and only investing what's in their own bank account? Are they playing the same game as the rest of us, just with a much, much bigger pile of cash?
Well, the answer, for the most part, is a hard no. The real secret, the thing they understand in their bones, is a concept called leverage. And I'm telling you, once you see how this works, you can never, ever unsee it.
Okay, so let's pull back the curtain and demystify this thing. What exactly is this powerful financial tool that seems to be hiding right under our noses?
At its very core, leverage is just using borrowed resources, money, credit, other people's capital, to blow up your potential investment returns. It's all about doing way more with way less of your own money.
And probably the best way to get your head around this is to think of a physical lever, right? With the right setup, a little bit of force from you can move a giant boulder that you could never, ever lift on your own. Financial leverage, it works the exact same way.
Look, theory is great and all, but let's make this real. We're going to use a super simple, real-world example in real estate so you can see just how this can build wealth like crazy. Okay, so let's say you've been working hard, you've been saving, and you've got $50,000. This is your skin in the game, your own capital. But you don't just want a $50,000 property. You're thinking bigger. So you go to the bank, you get a mortgage, and they lend you $200,000. This right here is what we call OPM, other people's money. Now check this out. Your 50 grand plus the bank's 200 grand means you now control $250,000 asset. You get all the rent, you get all the appreciation, even though you only put up a tiny fraction of the cost yourself. Now let's say the market does its thing and the property value goes up by just a modest 10%. Well, 10% on a $250,000 asset, that's a $25,000 gain. Pretty solid, right? But wait, here is the magic. You didn't just make 10%. That $25,000 gain happened on your initial $50,000 investment. You do that math, and that is a 50% return on your money. That is the raw power of leverage. It just amplified your return 5 times over. So if this is so powerful, why isn't everybody doing it? Well, it really boils down to how we're all taught to think about debt. Most of us are brought up to be scared of it, and for good reason. But it turns out that's not the whole story. I mean, think about it. From the time we're kids, we hear debt is bad, save up, pay cash for everything. And look, that's a good safety rule for your personal finances, but it totally misses a huge critical distinction. And that distinction is between good debt and bad debt. Bad debt buys you a lifestyle, swiping the credit card for vacations, getting the loan for a new car, things that lose value and just cost you money. But good debt buys you assets, things that make you money, like a rental property or a business. The wealthy are absolute masters at using good debt to snap up these kinds of productive assets. Okay, I need you to listen very closely to this next part. This is super important. Leverage is not a magic wand, okay? It's a multiplier. And that means its power cuts both ways. This right here is the number one rule of the game. The very same force that can turn a 10% market bump into a 50% gain for you can also create a catastrophic loss just as fast. It works both ways. And we really don't have to look far to see what happens when this goes wrong. The 2008 financial crisis? That was a textbook example of leverage gone bad on a global scale. You had people, banks, everyone borrowing way too much to buy assets that, frankly, they couldn't afford. And when the market turned, poof. The asset values collapsed, but all that debt, that stayed. So how do you use this tool safely? You have to internalize these 4 rules. First, only use leverage on assets that can pay for themselves, that generate cash flow to cover the loan. Second, don't get greedy. Never push it to the limit. Always leave a safety buffer. Third, know how you're getting out before you even get in. And finally, and this is the big one, remember that leverage just makes you more of what you already are. It will amplify a good decision into a great one, but it will turn a bad decision into an absolute disaster. All right. So now that we have a healthy respect for the risks, let's talk about how you can actually use this. You don't have to be a billionaire to start applying these ideas. The whole key is just to start thinking like the 1%.
And you can really start right where you are. A mortgage, like we just saw, is leverage. A small business loan to buy inventory that you then sell for a profit, that's leverage. But it's not even just about money. Partnering up with someone who has the cash while you bring the skills or the know-how, that's a form of leverage too. And that brings up a great point. You can leverage your unique talents to create things like digital products that make money for you long after you finish the work. So at the end of the day, the real goal here is to make a conscious shift in your mindset, to move away from thinking you can only use your own time and your own money, and to start figuring out how you can responsibly use the resources of others to get where you want to go faster. You know, when you really boil it all down, the wealthiest people, they aren't playing some secret, complicated game that the rest of us aren't invited to. They're playing the exact same game. Leverage just allows them to put way, way more pieces on the board than they ever could with just their own money. So that kind of leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? We're so quick to ask, is this too risky for me? But maybe that's the wrong question. Maybe the real question we should be asking ourselves is, am I educated enough to handle this tool the right way? Because the power and the responsibility, it's really in our hands. And I'll just leave you with this to chew on. While we're all so busy worrying about the risks of taking action, what about the risk of doing nothing? In a world that's always changing, always moving forward, is it possible that the biggest risk of all is just standing still?